10 scriptures that prove beyond the shadow of a doubt that Yeshua and the apostles wanted us to keep the law. Let's go. Matthew chapter 5 verse 17 through 20 says, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, not an iota, not a dot will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever relaxes one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." Matthew 23, 1 through 3. Then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, "The scribes and the Pharisees sit on Moses' seat. So do and observe whatever they tell you, but not the works they do, for they preach, but do not practice." In Luke chapter 16, Yeshua tells a story about a wicked yet rich man who died and went to hell. When he was being tormented in hell, he cried out to Abraham across a wide chasm, begging him to send word to his family to warn them not to suffer the same fate that he was suffering. This was Abraham's reply to the rich man in Yeshua's story. Verse 29, "But Abraham said, 'They have Moses and the prophets. Let them hear them.' And he said, 'No, Father Abraham, but if someone goes to them from the dead, they will repent.' He said to him, 'If they do not hear Moses and the prophets, neither will they be convinced if someone should rise from the dead.'" In John chapter 5, verse 46 through 47, Yeshua said, "For if you believed Moses, you would believe me, for he wrote of me. But if you do not believe his writings, how will you believe my words?" In 1 Corinthians 5 and 8, Paul explicitly says, "Let us therefore celebrate the festival, not with the old leaven, the leaven of malice and evil, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth." The Apostle John said in 2 John chapter 1, verse 6, "And this is love, that we walk according to his commandments. This is the commandment, just as you have heard from the beginning, so that you should walk in it." John chapter 7 verse 10 records Jesus attending the Feast of Tabernacles in Jerusalem despite being in danger of being found and killed by the Jews. It reads, "But after his brothers had gone up to the feast, then he also went up, not publicly, but in private." All of the Gospels clearly depict Yeshua preparing to keep Passover just prior to his execution. In Luke 22 verse 15 it reads, "And he said to them, I have earnestly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer." In Acts chapter 2 verse 1 it says this about Yeshua's disciples, "When the day of Pentecost arrived, they were all together in one place." Clearly they had gathered for the Moed Shavuot. Lastly, Acts chapter 20 and verse 16 says this about Paul, "For Paul had decided to sail past Ephesus so that he might not have to spend time in Asia, for he was hastening to be at Jerusalem, if possible, on the day of Pentecost." In addition to these scriptures, we know that both Yeshua and the apostles frequently taught from the law, and they used the feast days masterfully to teach spiritual principles. So they taught from the law, they kept the law, they advocated for the law, and they loved the law so much that they would put their own lives at risk in order to keep it. So why do so many people think the law is done away with again?